The current method that's in place to end drinking and driving is not working. It's time to look at the system from a fresh set of eyes. That's up next. The current theory used to dissuade people from drinking and driving is fear. Fear controls the population and says, well, listen, if I'm afraid I might get arrested for DUI, I'm not going to drink and drive as much. And if I don't drink and drive as much, there'll be less DUI crashes. If there's less DUI crashes, there can be less fatalities all around. It's a win-win-win. It seems to make sense, but it just doesn't ring through like that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So this theory came out of Stockton, California back in 1976. At the time, Stockton, California had a population of about 100,000 people. They got 10 motivated officers. They hit this area up pretty hard in that experiment area, and they tore it up essentially. And afterwards, what they looked at was after 6 months of heavy enforcement, the DUI numbers in that area were substantially fewer. That would be fatalities, traffic crashes, all around traffic infractions. Driving appeared to be better in that area. The federal government took this data, extrapolated it out, and made the numbers bigger, and then decided to apply the fear-based tactic nationwide, and they started developing nationwide standards and pressuring the different states into complying with this fear-based approach. Kind of around the same time as the war on drugs. Anyway, Florida was using this model when I joined the Highway Patrol back in 2004, and I teach at the academy right now. It's still being taught the exact same thing. Back in the day, I was a true believer. I thought it was really going to work, but just recently, I had the opportunity to pull the numbers. You would imagine the more DUI arrests that take place, the fewer the number of the fatalities. That's kind of what the Stockton, California study says, right? We increase the DUI arrests, so the traffic fatalities decrease. So here's what I did. I pulled the traffic fatalities from Hillsborough, Orange, and Palm Beach counties. They're all around the same size. And I put those in a graph format from 2005 to 2017 or 2018. One of them I have till 2017, one till 2018. We'll see. I also took the arrest data for DUI arrest and plotted that as well to see if you could decide whether the number of DUI arrests had anything to do with the number of traffic fatalities. When you look at the overlay, it doesn't appear there's much match or much correlation at all. DHSMV makes it very difficult for me to categorize alcohol-related fatalities because they categorize it so broadly. They don't make it DUI versus not DUI. If any person, driver or pedestrian, at fault or not at fault, has any alcohol in their bloodstream, it's an alcohol-related crash. So the pedestrian has one beer and he gets hit by a car, he dies, now that's considered an alcohol-related fatality. That's not what I'm looking to do. That's not a good assessment, and I think Florida is using that to hide the numbers because they know that the Stockton, California information will not be repeated in Florida, and they don't want to disclose it. But, hey, who am I? Since Hillsborough County has substantially more DUI arrests over the years, you would expect that their traffic-related fatalities would be down as well. That's what Stockton says. That's not the case. So take it for what it's worth. I also compared some of the more strict counties with some of the more liberal counties on a smaller basis. So I've pulled those up as well. And even though they're making few DUI arrests or fewer DUI arrests based upon the lower population, it doesn't appear as though the strictness or the severity of the courts or the system in that particular locale makes a difference overall when it comes to fatalities. I mean, Polk County is known in Florida as being one of the most strict counties there is. And their numbers, their arrests are high, and their traffic fatalities are high too. So it just doesn't make sense. Actually, I think what this may show is that if you have proactive DUI enforcement, you're more likely to see a higher number of DUI-related crashes because your officers are more adept and more trained to pick them up. So if you make fewer DUI arrests, more people skate under the radar with DUI fatalities than they should. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I can definitely see a world where that could exist. I've seen it happen myself. I just don't know if it's a broad scale problem. So the research shows that 25% of the population has drank and drove in the past 12 months. Now, when I say the research shows, we're talking about a 1972 study back in the early days of DUI, just like we were talking about before. So take it for what it's worth. But we're going to use 25% because it's the only number we got. We got another number we're going to use here in a minute, the number 80, and we'll talk about that. So 25% of the population admits to driving drunk or driving impaired in the past 12 months, based upon that study. Well, we got 17 million drivers in Florida, so that means there's about 4.25 million people in Florida that have admitted to drinking and driving in the past 12 months. And the numbers actually say that the average person who drinks and drives once actually drinks and drives 80 times in a given year. So now we're talking about 340 million incidents of DUI. I get in my car drunk, I drive to the store, and I drive back home from the store. That would be 2 separate incidents of DUI right there. 340 million of those each year using the governmental statistics. How many do you think we're arresting each year? Yeah. On a good year, we hit a 60,000. It's been a steady downward decline since about 2005-ish. And so now we're probably talking about 40,000 people in Florida that were arrested a year out of 340 million incidents of drinking and driving. That's crazy. So look at this graph. It's kind of interesting. You'll see that 2007 or 2008, we start seeing a reduction in the numbers. Now, there's 2 things I can attribute to that. One, that's around the same time the economy collapsed. I know a lot of people lost their jobs, so you have a lot less people out, a lot less numbers. But it's also the same time that the interlock device came out, where people started to get breathalyzers installed in their cars on a regular basis. So, I don't know. 2 major things happen at the same time. Is there a correlative connection between them? I think the economy is probably the more likely result, but you never know. We might want to check out that interlock device and see how that plays a role into it. If we can isolate that down as a factor. Hey, give me a shout from your state. Let me know if your laws are strict like Florida's are, whether they're the same or whether you have some conflict and things. Hit it hard, guys.